What's up guys, Chasing Lamely here with episode number 74 of Robin's Revival. Today is the end of season 9 transfer special, going into season 10 off an 8th place finish in the Premier League last season. So let's see how things look for us going forward. Let's see how the team and the squad are developing, and let's see what I'm going to start with seeing what the prediction looks like. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. We'll be back on the other side of the intro. So we're straight in there on the season preview screen so you can see what the media are saying about us. We are currently 250 to 1 to win the title with an 11th place predicted finish, but we also had an 18th place predicted finish last year and we finished 10 places above that. If we do 10 places above that again, it's a really, really good season. Also, I've just noticed whilst looking at this, one of the big transfers of the summer has been Ian going from Manchester United to Villarreal. I was desperately trying to sign Ian and it didn't happen. So we could have made some money there. He would have been our first choice goalkeeper still. But let's have a look at who's gone out first, and then we'll talk about who's coming in. So the first person who left actually in the transfer window was Jonathan Rocha, who's gone to Cerro-Largo FC in Uruguay. Those of you who are fans of Loki Doki will be very familiar with Cerro-Largo. He had a great series with that. Go and check that out once you're done watching this for sure. But we sold him on to Cerro-Largo for 20.5k. He didn't get a work permit at any point with us, unfortunately. But it could rise to 65k, and there is actually a sell-on clause in there, which could be quite profitable, because he is valued at being potentially worth £1 million. So that could be a very, very, very big sale for us in the future. Talking of very, very big sales, I sold Rainier, who was at one stage our record signing. He played 49 games for us, scored 12 goals, was decent in the 3 seasons he spent with us. But Burnley offered me 18.75 million, and I couldn't see him as more than a fringe player this season, which tells you just how far we've moved on the squad in such a short time in the Premier League, to be honest. But he's done well for us. He certainly never looked like the world beater we thought he could be, but he put in some solid performances. He'll do okay for Burnley. We'll see him again at some point, I'm sure, during this series. But Rainier moves on and we thank him for his service. I don't often highlight loans, but Thiago Araujo has gone on loan to Middlesbrough for the season. They've paid us 550k for the privilege, but I think put a clause in there. I did put a clause in there allowing them to buy him. I did, yeah, 650k. So we could at least get some money back. We've made a profit on him already. We get a bit more money back for a guy who, again, would have just been a fringe player for us this season. Such is the improvement in the squad we've made over the last couple of years. And after a season away on loan, Cody Drama finally joins Brighton on a permanent transfer for 3.9 million, added to the 1.3 they paid us to loan in the first place. The 5.2 million takeaway for a player we signed for £1 million in our last season in the Championship. He was a great servant to the club over the course of the 3 seasons he was in our first team, but I don't think he's going to have any future with us. So he can go play for Brighton, enjoy their relegation struggle, and we'll move on. Ben Johnson left us on a free at the end of his contract to join Charlton. At 30 years old, he had nowhere ready to go development-wise. He only played 8 games for us in the time we had him. He was very much brought in as kind of a backup option in the first place. So we have lost a considerable amount of money on him, but again, it was kind of an emergency backup situation. Not one I'm going to cry over losing that money on. Alejandro Garnacho has finally left the club on a permanent. He has gone to Leganes in Spain's second division. 375k we received for him, but it does have some add-ons and things that could see it rise up to 475 in the future. We made quite a lot of money on him over the course of having him, to be fair as well. We paid 16.25 million to buy him permanently after loaning him for a few seasons from Manchester United. He went on loan to Pumas, who gave us 625k for the privilege of having him on loan, and then we've just sold him for 375k, which by my maths means we sold him for £1 million overall, which is a pretty good return for a player who has reached his mid-20s and wasn't developing any further. Now, sadly, this is another big loss financially for us, but he was moaning about not getting enough first-team football and was doing my head in. I thought I could replace him fairly easily. So Jan Skorszatowski, the 24-year-old Polish international, has been sold to Sassuolo for 9 million. It's a 4 million basically haircut for us. But I think worth it long run. He only played 14 league games. Only played 36. I can maths. 36 league games for us and scored 8 goals. So he wasn't really as prolific as I hoped he was going to be. It didn't feel like a big loss to let him go. Maybe I'll regret it in the future. Sassuolo are a pretty decent side. But we'll see how that goes. He hasn't scored for them yet, so I've got to assume that he just doesn't have the goals in him. I thought he did. And again, a little bit of a clear out here. Jakob Brun Larsen has gone to Benfica. They paid us 2.1 million for him. We paid 5.5. That's a huge loss again. Not the most beneficial financial transfer window, it's got to be said, overall. But he was just taking up space in the squad. He wasn't going to play a lot this season. I just needed to take the money and run here, and that's what I've done. I've cut my losses, and I've let him go just to free up that space in the squad. Talking of freeing up space in the squad, Jaquil Marshall-Rutty, after a very unsuccessful loan at Southampton last season, where he only played twice all season, we sold him on to Huddersfield in the Championship for 700k, which is obviously 900k-ish, given that Southampton also paid us some cash for him. And a player we signed for free. He had a good season for us the first year in the Premier League. Didn't look like he was going to go much further with his development, and he's also 26. Hasn't played for Canada yet, which tells me that he's probably not going to be a Premier League player long term. So, a little bit sad to see him go, but he wasn't making it, so he had to go. And a player I signed who sadly didn't play for the club because he wouldn't get a work permit when we signed him. Jordi Ferrer, he came in on a free, 24 years old, after being released by Manchester City. And we've just sold him for 7 million to Rennes, which kind of makes up for some of the losses we've made over the course of the summer. Cassette wasn't going to get a work permit. He'd need to get capped by the Spanish national team to get a work permit. I mean, he could have been a really good player for us, but he would have had to get capped by the Spanish national team to get a work permit for us. And it just felt like if he's not playing for us, he's not going to play for Spain. Just move him on, make the money, let's make the smart decisions, and hopefully that does prove to be a smart decision long term. I had to let another older player go as well, Julian Weigl, who he came in again just as kind of cover to help back up our defensive midfield whilst we were dealing with the Arlen Page constantly suspending problem. A 3 million loss to sell him for 1.5 million to Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, but probably actually okay for us as a long-term decision. I mean, at 34, really, he had one transfer left in him, if we're being realistic. His pace was diminishing as well. A lot of his physicals and technicals even were starting to diminish. So it made sense to just let him go, and we'll take 1.5 million. It's helped us with the rebuild. Similarly, another player that I signed who couldn't get a work permit was Ghana's Ishaku Abdul Fatawu. He joined us a few seasons ago now, actually. He was a younger player when we signed him, 23, I think, when we signed him. We signed him on a free. We lent him to Pumas in Mexico, who have become a bit of an unofficial affiliate to us over the last few seasons. 1.1 million they paid us. Then we sent him on loan to San Marino when that loan ended, because he didn't want to go back to Mexico for some reason. He wanted to go to San Marino. We sold him to Hearts for 425k, which again is a £1.5 million profit we essentially made on a player who never played a game for us, never kicked the ball for us. I don't class that as being a bad piece of business at all. And who knows, maybe he'll find a revival in his fortunes in Scotland, and we'll see what happens with him, I guess. And again, in my constant battle to clear out the players who just won't get work permits without playing international football, we've let Ayrton go for probably way less than we should have. He's gone to the Brazilian third division for a team I don't really know who they are because I don't recognise the badge. We're going to call them poor, because that's what it says. 21.5k, there is some add-ons and stuff structured into the deal, so if they do make a profit on him, it will be fine. We'll see some money back, and hopefully that's going to be the future for him in terms of our financial things. And the final sale was Junior Beta, another player I brought in who I couldn't get a work permit for. Lent him to Benfica last season, didn't really get in their first one. I was hoping he would play for their first team, get capped for the Ivory Coast, get a work permit. It didn't happen. So he has gone to Mexico as well. Lots of money seems to be in Mexico at this stage in the game. Tigres have paid us 13.5 million for a player we paid 3.5 to Atletico Bilbao for, which is a pretty good return. £10 million for a player who never played for us. Maybe he'll play his way into the Ivory Coast squad and become a world-class player, but for now he's moved on, we've made money and moved on, and it's time for us to move on to go and see who's come in, which is the bit you all kind of came to see. And we start off the window arguably pretty strong with an £8.75 million move for Moussa Dembele. I needed a striker to replace Skorshotowski. Dembele seemed like a good shout. He had a decent season at Arsenal. He had a few half-decent years at Newcastle as well. And obviously has done well in the past for Lyon, for Celtic, for Fulham. He's had a good career all told. 172 league goals in 412 league games is a pretty good return. 6 goals last season in the Premier League for a decent Norwich side. But I feel like we can supply him better. He is very much going to be our backup striker. I think he'll be sat behind Parody in the pecking order. He'll get enough game time to make an impact where he can. We'll try and keep him fit, try and keep his physicals from diminishing too much. And hopefully he's a bit of a super sub from the bench. Player we can play in some cup games just to keep him fit. We'll see what happens with Moussa Dembele. Following him through the door was 33-year-old, 142 capped Nigerian Wilfred Ndidi, a player fans of English football probably know pretty well by now. In real life, he's at Leicester, has been at Leicester for a while. He played 14 seasons in this universe for Leicester, and they sold him to us for £12 million, which doesn't feel like a bad piece of business to me. He is a world-class defensive midfielder. He's played a lot of games for Leicester and done fairly well. They got relegated last season, so he wanted to move on. They were willing to sell him for far, far less than he was worth. And I can't complain about picking up what is essentially a world-class defensive midfielder for £12 million and put some pressure for competition on Page. And obviously Page's love of getting a red card every now and again will let Ndidi play a lot of football. I think this is good business for us. I think it's going to help us push up the table. On the lower end of the scale, we saw another Nigerian international, Abere Eze, who we've come up against on the channel a few times. If you've been watching the series, you know this guy has a real knack for scoring against us. He seemed to score every time we played against him, and considering he only scored 25 goals in total for Middlesbrough, he probably scored 5 of them against us, which is, not the best. He's not a prolific goal scorer by any stretch of the imagination, but what he does do is he gives us options both on the wings as an attacking midfielder. He gives us options in midfield, he gives us an option up front. He's a really versatile player that I can maybe keep on the bench to bring off, to change a game, to really help us do something. I think he's kind of the long-term or the short-term guy we're going to keep on the bench and just kind of fill the role we brought Jack Grealish in for originally. Fill that role to kind of be able to fill in where we need him to fill in, and hopefully just pull off a little bit of magic here and there where we can get the magic from him. It should be good. It should be a good signing. I'm hoping he's going to do very well for us and produce some pretty vital goals. So we'll see what happens with him. And next up, £12 million brings in a returning old friend to us. Gianni returns to the club. Now, it seems like an odd decision because I don't really understand, even I don't really understand how he fits into the squad tactically. We're playing with what is essentially a 4-5-1. With no attacking midfielder. But this does give me the option to switch things up. The fact that he can play as a central midfielder will help us out. The fact that he can also play as a centre-back and a left-back will help us. He's not the tallest player in the world, but the fact that he can play as a centre-back and a left-back. Versatility. A player from the bench. £12 million for a guy who came to us on loan, had a decent season, went back to United, played for United the season I think we came to the Premier League. He was playing for United, and then moved on to West Brom, had a couple of good years at West Brom, and again, West Brom got relegated, so they sold us to him for an absolute song. We're going to try and keep him for a few years, see how he develops, and see if he needs to be a player we work back into our plans, work tactically into our team. But for now, just a good player to have around to give us an option to switch things up where we need to. Now, I'll admit this signing was a bit suspect. Mohamed Lambers has come from Feyenoord to join us. He's only played 2 games for Feyenoord. He's 22 and he's only played 2 games for Feyenoord. I've paid 1.8 million and immediately loaned him out to Karabag to get him some, hopefully, work permit worthy football. But he's a player I think has a big upside if he can reach it. If he doesn't, I'll make a profit on him when I sell him, but if he can reach his potential, we should be looking at a really good player for us long term. And a guy who can play centre half. He's only about 173 is 5'6". Probably not going to use him as a centre half, but as a midfielder, a player who can play an attacking midfield as well a little bit. Maybe is a player who can develop and become something. We'll find out how he goes. If nothing comes of him, nothing comes of him. But 1.8 million in the Premier League is not really a big gamble. So we'll see what happens. And I finally got my man. Veselin Kojic is a player I had arranged for a transfer, and then he didn't get to go through because when we agreed the transfer, we were in the Championship, we got to the Premier League, and the Premier League can only sign a certain number of under-21 players from abroad, under-22 players from abroad. We finally got the deal done for $4.9 million from Red Star Belgrade, and then we've moved him on loan to Hearts for the season just to develop for a year. He's not quite first-team football ready. I think a season at Hearts where he can play European football, he can play in the Scottish Premier League, he will get to play against some decent enough sides, get some development time. This is the guy long-term, I think, is our first choice left-back. I'm really happy to have him here, and obviously Gerson Ferrer has been out on loan as well. He's going to stay another season out on loan at Reading. So these two should be really hot competition for left-back next season, which is what I'm really looking for. And again, taking advantage of Leicester's relegation a little bit, Eduardo Quaresma has joined us, the Portuguese international, 11 caps, 6.5 million we spent on him. Leicester paid 32.5 for him. Got relegated last season, was probably their best defender. It was just a lot. I think they had a lot of injuries and stuff that let them down. A lot of bad tactical decisions let them down as well. Things weren't really looking peachy at Leicester all season last year. You'll remember we beat them 4-0 on the opening day of the season. And we weren't exactly firing on all cylinders at that stage of proceedings. But he gives me an extra option at centre-half, something I really needed for the depth. He's not going to push Obadima or Pedro out of starting positions, Obadima returning this season. But again, more depth and can play as a holding midfielder as well, which is also very beneficial. I think he's a good signing for us as an option to rotate in, and I'm quite happy with him coming in. However, there is competition for it because Pablo Ramon has joined us from Real Madrid, a 29-year-old defender with no caps for Spain, but he has had seasons on loan at Valladolid and at Valencia and came through at Mallorca originally, but Real Madrid paid 700k for him, never used him in their first team, but I think he's a better player than some of our defenders. Obviously not good enough for a world-class team, but probably good enough to get a few games for us here. He wanted to be a star player. I don't think he's going to be, but again, having those 4-5 options at centre-half, I need to shake things up. If someone's out of form, I can't complain about that, and in fact, they can also slot in at right-back if we need him to. I think this is a good signing on a free, and if he does get annoyed and we have to sell him on 35 million, will go quite nicely in the bank and quite a long way towards a rebuild, so I think that's actually good business. And another free that we brought in from Spain is Oscar. He hasn't got a work permit, so we're going to try and loan him out somewhere, hopefully Pumas, because they've done really well developing players over the last few years. But he's got some really good vision. I think he's got some really good potential. He came in on a free at the end of his contract from Barcelona. He's played 11 games for Barcelona's first team and quite a lot of games for Barcelona B. Looks like a fairly solid performer. He always seems to get decent ratings when he has played for Barcelona. So that's a good sign that I'm taking that as a positive sign. Again, if I have to sell him on because he can't get a work permit, then I'm going to make a profit. So I'm quite happy with him as a signing financially and indeed, hopefully long term. I needed a goalkeeper as a backup to Dominik Livakovic. I'm probably going to sign another goalkeeper to challenge Livakovic for competition as well. Try to find someone younger who can maybe be the natural successor to Livakovic. I've got quite a lot of goalkeepers in the squad as well, which is kind of an issue I need to balance. But Erkan Gül is a German former under-21 international. I signed him from Bayern Munich for free, and he was actually Bayern's backup goalkeeper the last couple of seasons and got a fair number of games for a goalkeeper. 13 games for a backup goalkeeper over the last 2 seasons, and actually only conceding 15 goals is a pretty strong showing for anyone by anyone's standards. So I think he's gone from being Bayern's backup to my backup, but he'll probably have as much opportunity of game time, especially if Livakovic picks up an injury. Erkan Gül feels like a guy that can step in, fill his boots, and eventually become as good as Livakovic. We'll see how that goes, but I'm looking at him as a long-term, see how he develops kind of player, and hopefully he'll become something special. Now, because I had to loan out my two young left-backs, I've brought in one on loan. Yoso Gallego has come in from, it's probably Gallego. I'm not good with Spanish names. He's coming on loan from Barcelona. He's a left-back, 22 years old, can play most of the way up the left-hand side. Really quick, probably needs to work on his crossing a little bit, but that's a bridge we can cross pretty comfortably. He's a decent passer of the ball. He's good at moving the ball around. Decently creative as well. If his pace and his stamina can kind of hold up, we should be okay. In terms of his previous exploits, he has played for Barcelona, and he's played pretty well whenever he has played for Barcelona. Also played for Athletic Bilbao, where he came through looking like a decent player long term. 1.9 million to loan a player of that quality for the season certainly won't hurt us, and he does give us that extra bit of depth at left back to kind of challenge Bjorkan and Konoplia for that role. So competition for places, bit of extra speed. He could be a strong decision for us as we try and move into a European place, hopefully this coming season. Now, I always like a cheeky free, and Bernard Barrett is the cheeky free. He is a guy who came through Everton's youth system and got capped by England at under-20 level. Has played a few games here and there for Everton, never really broke into their first team proper. But he's had a few loans out to the Championship and League Two. Had a really good season in League Two a few years ago with Walsall. Had a good season on loan at Hull 4 seasons ago, and has kind of stagnated. He's been playing for Everton's youth team. He's been playing all for their reserves and been playing quite well for them, as we can kind of see at the bottom of the screen. But never really broke into their first team. But I figure we'll give him one last chance. We can be his last chance saloon. He's very quick, which is going to benefit us as a possible sort of coming off the bench rotation option as a sub who can come in, maybe cause some havoc in defences late in games. And again, he's cost me nothing. If I sell him on, I'll make a profit. I'm quite happy to do that. So we'll keep an eye on him and see what he can develop into. And our final signing of note is a guy I've been chasing for a while. I had lined up and again got scuppered by the overage player rule and all that stupidity. Grigory Chuprinya has joined us on loan initially from Dynamo Kiev, because that was how I got round the rules about not being able to sign players full time under 22. So we paid $6 million to loan for the season. That's kind of a down payment because, as you can see on your screen, I can pay £28 million at any time and I can sign him as a first team player for us, which is what I'm hopefully going to try and do. Build up some funds, sell some players on where I can in January, or we'll see how our budget looks at the end of the season. Hopefully we're gambling on a European performance. He won't play a lot of first team games for us this season, but he is rated as being one of the top young players in the world by the media, and has been since he was 16 actually, which is quite impressive. So I'm hoping Chuprinya is actually going to be one of those guys who becomes a world-class player, a real star in our midfield. We'll give him as much game time as we can. He'll certainly be playing in cup games and stuff. He's locked in for any cup games he's fit for, or any games we feel like are kind of throwaway, easy, slam dunk wins. He'll get some game time. So keep an eye out for Grigory Chuprinya, and that's kind of how our squad is shaken up. We'll have a look at the squad depth report before we wrap up the episode, so we can see what we're looking at in terms of the overall strength of the squad. So we can see here, we're going to start from the goalkeepers, because why not? A lot of our goalkeepers are on left. But let's eliminate players who are not currently at the squad. We can hide players who are on loans out. That's probably wise as things go. So, Novakovic and Erkor in goal, decent enough as goalkeeping options. At right back, we have Pedro, Matiasinho, Konoplia, Ramon, Lema, all guys who can do adequately at right back if we need them to. Matiasinho will, of course, be the first choice for the start of this season. I've still got a little bit of money in the bank to spend if I need to upgrade at right back as well. The centre half, Obadima, Pedro, Page, Mancini, Ramon. It's an endless list of players who are good enough to be there. Albert Mikel is still around, and Didi can play there. Quaresma, Gianni's respectable at the back as well. So we've got plenty of options there. At left back, Bjorkan, Konoplia, Gallego, Gianni as well, all able to fill in at left back. I'm pretty happy with that depth there as well. Defensive midfielder, we couldn't be stronger here, I don't think, without spending some stupid money. Page, who's already looking great for us, and Didi, Lima, Mancini and Quaresma all able to fill in there. In centre mid, we'll have to go to the longer view screen for this. We've got Ruiz, Page and Didi, Kubo, Lima, Taylor, Connor, Abizi, Izzy, Solari, Oscar, Thomas Drews is back from his loan. I'm probably going to send him back out. Chuprinya to go in there and develop as well. Gianni can go in there and play as well. We're doing all right there. On the left wing, Ruiz, Parody, Connor, Gordon, Solari again. Very strong on the wings. Even if you go further down, Bjorkan's good there. Eze is good there. Crétin Noir is good there as well. Lima can even fill in there if I need to. On the right-hand side, still strong. Take Kubos, Gordon, Solari, Connor, Easy, Crétin Noir, Bernard Barrett, Lima, all effective there. Very good in terms of players who can play in lots of positions. Then up top, the strength doesn't look maybe so great, but Parody, Gordon, Kubo, Dembele, Easy, all good enough to be playing for us and starting for us up top. it's a really strong-looking season, which just brings us to what we need to wrap up. We're coming back for the Liverpool game on Wednesday. That's a lock. That's our first game of the season. We are going to be missing Cade Gordon, Frederick Bjorkan and Take Kubo, but that's fine. Our pre-season campaign has been fantastic. Draw against Atletico Madrid, a 4-1 win over Borussia Dortmund, a 1-0 win over Benfica, a bit of a throwaway 17-0 win over New College Swindon. Grigori Chuprinia got 4 goals in that game. Pretty good, we'll allow that. We then went on a tour of Singapore, where we played Niigata Unicorn, beat them 5-0, beat Tampines 2-0, Malacca 8-0, Tanjong Pagar 6-0, Kembangan United, I knew I'd regret this, Kembangan United 13-0 in a friendly. Our last leg of that tour was a friendly against Sheffield United, a comfortable 2-0 win as well against Sheffield United, which they'll be worried it makes them as good as Tampines. Good stuff. Ajax, we lost 2-0 to our first loss of pre-season when we beat PSG 3-0. Beat PSG 3-0 in pre-season. I know pre-season means very little, but that's something you're pretty confident about going into this season. And Inter Milan 4-1. We then lost to Crewe, but it was a bit of a rotatey squad. It was also a bit of an unfit squad. Darren Taylor picked up a red card. Bunch of stuff happened there, so we'll allow that. 5-1 win over Hungerford, 10-0 win over Penarrosa, and an 11-0 win over Swindon Supermarine with 6 goals for Jason Connor to send him into the season in decent form. And we're playing Liverpool in Wednesday's episode just to keep us up and fit and ready and good to go. We should be fine. We're going to go and have a good game against Liverpool. That'll be the plan for our next episode. I'm going to wrap this one up because otherwise we're going to be here all day. Thank you for watching, guys. I have as always been chasing Laney. Join me on Wednesday for that game against Liverpool. Don't forget, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Leave comments down below. Tell me how you think about the pre-season prediction. Is 11th generous? Is 11th underestimating us a little bit? Is 11th where you think we're going to finish? Pick a spot. Where do you think we're going to finish with the squad we've developed for this year? In the meantime, though, I have been chasing Laney. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one.